we go. There's my scene. There I am. Let me pull this up. Okay, so my name is John Hallgarth, and this stream today is going to be all about how to model a tower crane in ArchiCAD. So thanks for joining, and hopefully we're not going to be too rough today, but no promises, as this is my first time. So there is a lot of stuff I want to cover today, so hopefully we can kind of get in a rhythm of the topics we're going to be covering. But let's go ahead and I got a few slides here that I wanted to talk about, and then we will get into the actual models here shortly. So really my whole objective of doing this live stream is really to, I would say, challenge how ArchiCAD is being used and really expose a different viewpoint of how ArchiCAD can be used in commercial construction. So that's my background. I work here in Southern California, and I've been using ArchiCAD for about 10 years now, and I've always used it in, I think, a much different manner than most people typically use it for. Certainly it's an architectural design tool, or that was the original intent, but I've always used it a little differently for more of as a content management tool and a way to bring together all different types of content. And so that's something that I'm going to really try to highlight during each of these weekly live streams. So really the focus of each episode is going to be talking about specific trades of construction. So obviously in this first episode, we're going to be taking a look at tower cranes and building a tower crane from scratch, and also talking about how to collect information or grab models from around the internet and different sources for creating cranes. So that will be our topic today, but there's a ton of other topics that I'm interested in doing that really present how ArchiCAD can be used for each of those different trades of construction. So I'm pretty excited about all that, and hopefully we can keep this thing rolling and have a good time doing so, and really learn some things along the way. So I have a lot of plans for what to do with this live stream, but one of my major goals is to really bring in industry specialists from all around the industry. So what I mean specialists, I mean actually bringing in the trades themselves to talk about what it is that they do, how they use CAD or BIM in their workflows, what are some of the problem areas or challenges that they experience on their typical types of projects, and just talk in general about how technology is evolving and working for them or not working for them. So I think that'll be pretty interesting to bring people on and really just talk about BIM and the industry in general. So and finally, the fourth main point here of doing these live streams is really to show off some of the template system that I've developed that I'm calling ContraBIM. It's really my standards and my templated way of using ArchiCAD to achieve a whole bunch of different things for construction, whether it's just setting up your views to be able to overlay drawings from your design teams, or shop drawings from your subcontractors, or as-builts, or whatever content you may have. That's really what the ContraBIM system is built for, is being able to bring all this together and really perform overlays and review things in context. So with that, let's go ahead and just real quickly, I'm going to mention some of the upcoming topics. Next week, we're going to be talking all about concrete structures. So we're really going to dive deep into, looking at probably a high-rise structure. We'll model everything from foundations all the way up. We'll talk about quantity takeoffs and how to produce estimates directly to Excel. So really looking forward to next week. That's going to be diving a little bit more into the actual system itself, into the ContraBIM system and some of the workflows that I've developed. But this first episode is going to be a little bit more loose, and we're going to test out presenting a few different things, and really have some fun with just looking at different modeling techniques and building different components. And we'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But so each of the episodes really are going to have several different focus areas. Each episode we're going to try to hit on a bunch of the same topics, just applied to different trades or different parts of construction. So we're going to be talking about bringing file types together, whether it's PDFs, DWGs, IFC files, Revit files, point clouds. Going to be bringing it all together throughout various episodes of this live stream series. We're going to be talking about just how to bring all that into the same environment so that you can really create context from it so that you can then review one piece against all others. We will be performing reviews and just showing how ArchiCAD can really be used to thoroughly scrub drawings in a systematic fashion. We'll be talking about modeling and the direct quantity takeoffs we can produce from those. We'll be talking a lot about estimating, how to take your quantities, organize it into specific bid packages, and then link all that content into an Excel estimate template. We'll do the same for scheduling. We'll talk about layout points and really taking efforts from the model into the field. So for today, really I'm breaking down things into 4 main topics. The first being modeling tips. So I think a crane is a really interesting element of construction. To me, it's like the signature of a job site. Whenever I'm driving on the freeways or out there driving around, I always have an eye just looking for tower cranes, and it's really the like I said, the signature of a construction site in itself. So to me, they're really fascinating. They are a key part of the job. And if you have a crane that's getting good production, then your project's moving along as it should. I think a crane is pretty much a project within itself because there's so many different components of it. There's and it is a big structure in itself. It's kind of like its own project, just in one specific package. So so today we want to have some fun with looking at different techniques for modeling different components. So we're going to start with just the basic building blocks, walls, slabs, columns, beams, and really just go from that to building individual components, and then adding more detail with certain morphs in some cases, and then how we go from the design tools that we have to creating GDL objects, and how do we manipulate those GDL objects so that we can get nice looking floor plans and have it work a little better for us. So we'll just kind of walk through the process of creating elements and going from individual components into group components and objects. So the second main area that we're going to talk about is just looking at some of my favorite online resources for understanding and finding different crane charts. And so we're going to go online and we're going to look at some of the my favorite providers of cranes, and we'll download some charts, and I'll point out a few other locations online that I use as a resource for trying to find details or information about cranes. But we'll definitely be bringing a crane chart into ArchiCAD today, and we'll start reviewing it for just accuracy. We'll check the scale. I typically find that crane charts are a little bit off in terms of how they measure out. So we'll point out some of those things and talk about how to use those crane charts within ArchiCAD itself. We'll also explode and kind of break apart PDFs into different components so that we can then reference them into different views, whether it's a section or a plan view. And so we'll talk about how to use PDFs within ArchiCAD, one of my favorite features of ArchiCAD. So, and then we'll also talk about how to generate reports. We're not going to get super detailed into this, but I just want to talk a little bit of, in practice about how you go from, individual components that would make up, say, a tower element of a crane that has maybe 100 or so different components, or subcomponents, I should say. And how do we combine that up and give it enough information that we can start producing interesting and useful interactive schedules so that we can then really start conditioning the data, setting values for how we want to price or schedule. And so we'll talk about reporting in general. We'll talk about properties and classifications, how those play a role, and also just how, once we have content being reported out of the model, how do we send that downstream to other roles and workflows, such as scheduling and estimating. So a few more here. We'll talk a little bit about layout points. That's something that I haven't seen anyone else really showing in ArchiCAD. So to me, that's is something that's really cool. There's a lot of potential in just adding actual layout points using coordinates within ArchiCAD. and you can use that for a number of different things. Obviously, for self-perform trades, that's critical, but just for going out and doing quality control checks and surveys in the field, pushing points back and forth with ArchiCAD is a really viable option that I think a lot of people could really get a lot of benefit from if they're doing that. So we'll talk about how to create those points, how to run a report that is in the right format for exporting it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the CSV format, which is probably the most common and interoperable format for importing points into most total station controllers. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and in some later live streams we'll really dive into this process and even show how we can actually export the points and import them back into a controller. So final point here before we jump into the models is we are going to be talking about just some basics of exports. So how do we take a crane model? In this case, you can see in the background, I've actually brought this into Google Earth. So we'll walk through that step because I think that's a pretty interesting and very visual way of looking and building your site plan in Google Earth. We can talk about some PDF exports, and I've already gone through and I've already saved out a bunch of different library parts and modules. So we'll talk about that process and how we can go from building a crane to breaking it off into components that are then really useful for reports, but also for adding to future projects and future site plans and logistical plans. So, okay, so with that, let's switch things up here a little bit. I'm gonna close out of these slides, and okay, so let's just check real quick to make sure that we are still online. And let's see, I'm just gonna, okay, welcome. Oh, it's just playing from the back. Okay, I think we're still live. I hope we're still live. If we're not, I am recording this, so this will be played at a later date, and in the risk of not losing what I've started, I'm just going to continue on, and hopefully people can see it out there. If you can, if someone's watching right now, then maybe just add a note in the chat saying that you can hear me and that you can see the screen and that we are live right now. So, okay, so I'm going to switch over to a file that I have that I use just as kind of like an inventory of different cranes. And just to talk real quickly, just to kind of isolate some different cranes that we have. So all these cranes over here that we're looking at, these are the base cranes that we have built into ArchiCAD. So if I go into our library here, we have several cranes underneath the site and equipment library, which is a very old library, but I still use these from time to time. And yeah, so these are just the cranes that we're looking at here. What's cool about these is these are all real GDL objects, and so as you push and pull these, they actually will change in height. And so yeah, I still use these for just the quickest types of cranes that I would want to add to a logistics plan. There are some other options for bringing cranes into ArchiCAD, and one of those options is just by simply dragging and dropping SketchUp objects. So that's what these are. These are just objects I've found on the Google warehouse, where you can literally just drag and drop these in. And I think I actually have some of these. If I go to, I have some of these sources saved here. Let's just grab this, and I'm going to just copy that, and let's open this up, and I'm going to plug this in to my browser. And so you can find these cranes online, and you can even play with them in 3D here. So yeah, there's some really great cranes online here, and you can find a bunch of them on Google Warehouse. So anyway, yeah, so this is just all I wanted to do with this file was just kind of point out that you can bring in a bunch of, if you don't have the time to model a crane, then you can certainly bring it in just by importing them directly into ArchiCAD. And then from there, if you need to manipulate them, like in this case, this was an entire assembly of a crane that's similar to what we're going to be building today. But that is an assembly that that you can then just convert into a morph and then manipulate from there. So, okay, so I'm going to just close this, and that's all I really wanted to point out with this file. There is one other type of thing that we can do here, and I'll just point this out real quick, is we can actually bring PDFs into ArchiCAD, explode them, clean them up, and then save those as GDL objects. And so this is just an example of that. This GDL object that's just been converted to line work and then brought back in. And yeah, so that's even quicker route than modeling, but obviously it's just a single plane. And yeah, so that's one other option for looking at cranes. But I'm going to go ahead and close this file. I'm not going to save that. And let's see. Let's pull up the example file that we're going to be looking at today. So this is the file that you've seen from the preview. And so this is essentially what we're going to be recreating today. And just starting at the bottom here, we'll just kind of quickly take a look at some of the different components. So we have a foundation here. We'll talk about how to add a foundation and report the foundation. We'll talk about building anchors and individual tower components like this. We can see here, this is yeah, an individual object component. And so we can actually go in and start manipulating these objects, just going right into the GDL settings there. But we'll get into that here shortly. And so I'm going to bring back this model. We can also do different details such as tie-ins to the decks. So if you have to, if you have a very tall structure, then you need to brace off your crane. And so this is one way of doing so. And we actually have, if I do a show all here, we can see that we do have some of those layout points added in. And you can also see here that there's some other components here. I have a graphic override turned on. So these are just kind of the building blocks. And so we're going to be building a bunch of these today. And these are just combinations of slabs, columns, morphs, and walls. And so those are just the basic building blocks that we would then create and kind of mash together into morphs and then eventually turn into objects. So, okay, so I'm going to keep coming up here. I have a lot of things kind of pulled off to the sides here. That's all on an ArchiCAD layer. So I'm going to turn this off. But again, those are all just examples of components that I've built within ArchiCAD that are just simply using the basic design tools. So we can turn that off real quick. And okay, so at the top here, we have our main jib assembly. And you can see everything from our trolley, in this case, a double trolley assembly, a single. We have our cabin, and actually even have a little guy in there, which you can use as just like kind of a placeholder for an operator if you want to really start tracking, you know, your costs. If you want to break it down to you know, operating time, if you want to assemble an entire crane estimate that way. We have a bunch of other components here, and actually, if I pull up, let's see, let's pull up under my palettes and under my selections. I've actually created several selections here. So if you double click on one of these, you can see that that's just individual components of the crane. And so using these selections is actually really handy when you're working with a bunch of different components that have tons and tons of little subcomponents. So any of these you can just double click and put together. So when you're building big assemblies like this, it's I'd recommend yeah, using this. It's a nice way of organizing things and being able to go back and select things individually or in groups. So okay, so with that, that's I think a long enough intro into what we are going to be talking about today. So I'm going to let's minimize this, and what I want to do next is I want to take a look real quick at some of my favorite resources online. So today we're going to be building one of the most popular cranes out there, a Liebherr what they call I think they call it a hammerhead crane, but there's a top slewing crane. There's a bunch of different names for it. So let's just go into the construction machines here, tower cranes, and let's go in and we can find charts on all the different types of cranes that they offer. And what we want to be building today is this top slewing crane. So we'll go into the settings here. And I think one of the most popular types is this high top ECH. So let's go in and yeah, it's like their classic crane, the Liebherr ECH. And they have several different models of this depending on what the purpose is, with different max hook heights, different load capacities, and just different uses in general. So what the one that we wanted to build today was the 630 ECH 40, which is a very popular crane. If we go into the details here, we can change these back and forth between imperial and metric depending on where you're located, and we can actually just go in and we can download the data sheet here. So what I'm going to do is I'll just open it up, and with the crane charts directly from Liebherr, they are intended for several different languages. So there's several included within this one individual chart. So as we go through the charts, we can see the different configurations of the cranes with their maximum lifting capacities. And there's a ton of different information in here that's really interesting, just about the different driving units, speeds, and everything else. But some of these, the international version with several different languages is sometimes a little bit, kind of too much information to try to sift through when you're really looking for just one specific language. In this case, obviously English. So instead of using a chart from here, there's a bunch of other sources that we can find charts. In the U.S. here, Morrow Crane is the biggest supplier. I think they're the exclusive supplier of Liebherr cranes. So we can also go to their site here, and this is actually a really great resource for just kind of understanding all different types of cranes. They have a ton of great information on their website here, including some of the basics on like they have a tower one or crane 101, which is a pretty cool little interactive web page here that you can just kind of click on different elements and understand different pieces of it. You can even go to pull up the diagrams and really get some detail on the different components that make up a crane. So Morrow is a really great resource for just understanding cranes, but they call the top slewing crane a hammerhead. So we'll open up that, and you can see the listing of all the different types of cranes. So let's go back down, and the 630 ECH 40 is the version that we wanted to look at today. And so what's nice about going through one of the local suppliers, in this case, we're using obviously Morrow's crane charts, is they really filter it so that it's intended for the local audience. So in this case, everything's in English, and it's a little easier to just go through. And they actually include some other details, which are really nice, just about different tie-in assemblies and different notes on kind of what you need to go through and check off before you really plan on erecting a crane on site, and understanding all the little things that we need to consider, such as power supply, tie into the decks, maximum heights, and so on. So a bunch of different information on here. We have a full component list, which is really helpful just for understanding the individual pieces. And so what we'll do here is, I think I've actually downloaded this already, but if you're following along, you can do this same thing and just download directly to where we're going to be saving this. In this case, I think I already have this one saved in my reference files for this particular episode, and so I am not going to save it, but I will include a bunch of links to these sites in the show notes today. And there's also a few others that I'll point out here real quickly. Another local one out here in California is Biggie Cranes. They have a bunch of different types of cranes to offer for rentals or I think for purchasing as well. So that's a good resource. There's All Crane, which is another good one. I think they serve more on the East Coast. So that's another really good resource. There's tons of great resources online. So I'm just pointing out a few that I've gone to and found when I've been doing different research. So I'll include a bunch of others in the show notes for this episode. So yeah, don't feel like you need to try to follow along with all these individuals. But okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to close all these and let's go back here. So hey there, yes, you're live and I can hear you quite well. Okay, thanks to Badu for that comment. I can hear you loud and clear. Thank you, Jacqueline. Great. So as long as you can still see me, then I think we are good. So we will continue. Okay. So let's go back and I'm going to open up essentially it's the same file, just with having deleted out the crane that we were going to be building. And so what I want to do now is let's just start from the beginning here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my reference files here, and I'm going to open up that chart. And okay, so here we are. I'm using Bluebeam here, and okay, so we have this PDF, and so with any PDF, we can of course bring this into ArchiCAD very, very easily. And one of the first places I'm going to start is probably just this page 2 of this this particular chart. And so we'll just take this and we're going to bring this in, and I always like starting with a worksheet. So in this case, we just have a blank worksheet here. And so what we're going to do is we'll just take this entire PDF. We don't need to separate out or extract any pages. And I'm just going to drag and drop it over. And I'm just going to pick that page 2 and place it into the model here. So if I zoom way in, do a quick measurement and just see what it was brought in as. So it's only 19 feet right there. So we need to do a major scaling of this drawing. And how I'm going to do that is I'm actually just going to grab, let's see, I'm going to grab this center line right here. I'm going to zoom way in. And a lot of the times I like using these guidelines just for getting right in the very center. And we'll see if this even is useful for us in this case. But I'm going to grab from that point, and I'm going to just, actually before we do that, let's just scale it right here. And then we're going to move it so that it's in the right location of our project. But yeah, so the first thing is from that center line, I have this overall dimension, this 274, 3 inches. And so that's what I'm going to scale to here. So with my drawing selected, I'm going to zoom into that center line point, and I'm going to do a Control K, and I'm just going to click from that center point and pull all the way out. And 274.3 is the number I want. And so I'm going to zoom to this point and click right there, and then pull to the right and just type in 274.3. And okay, so that should rescale my drawing. And if I just click from that point and pull all the way out, I can see my measurement is exactly on that 274.3. So we've now scaled this PDF correctly so that we can then really place it into the context of our project. So if I zoom out, I can see my 0 point is right here. So I'm actually going to take this and drag it over and bring it in. So, but looking at this right here, I can actually see that just by eyeballing this, that line is not directly on the center of this tower. So I'll probably do a slight adjustment once I get over there. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull another guideline down, and I'm just going to find that center point right there. And then I'm just going to grab this whole thing and pull it over. And where's my 0 point? There it is. So, okay. So now we have this crane in our project. It's on a worksheet, and we can do a number of different things with it, but One of the first things here is I want to get that alignment really close so that it's actually right on or as close as it can be to the center of these 2 points. So again, what I'm going to do is I can just take a guideline and drop it in there, and I'll do the same thing on the other side, and I'm just trying to find about as close as possible. And with the line tool, I'm just going to click from one side to the other, and okay. And now I can find a midpoint there. And so I can see that midpoint is probably just a little bit off. So what I will do is I'm just going to grab my drawing from that point and pull it over, and I'm just going to move it. It wasn't very much, but I could tell it was a little bit off. It's almost an inch. So really it wasn't much at all, but that's fine. We're just going to leave it there. Okay, so there we go. We got this PDF referenced in, and so now we can, there's a bunch of other things that we can do with it. Typically what I like to do is I'll pull one off to the side, and I'm just going to push it out, say 600 feet, just like a nice clean number. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to just start cropping this just slightly. So I'm going to pull this over, and I'm just going to cut out some of the stuff that I probably don't really want to see in this case. So I'm just going to, I'll cut that out, and I can shrink this down. And I want to just, kind of really isolate my content. And what we'll do is we'll just explode this real quick into our current view and see what we can get out of this PDF. So as long as your PDF is a vector, then you can explode it and get the line work coming through. But depending on how that PDF was saved, excuse me, sometimes the quality is not quite as good as what we might want it to be. And so what I'm going to do is I'll actually delete out that background that was that PDF, and then we can just zoom in here and we can start seeing what these components are that came through. Everything gets grouped, so if we suspend our groups with just an Alt-G, we can really start getting in and seeing individual components. So what I always find interesting is to see what is converted. So if we go to our fill tool and just do a Control-Alt, we can see what all the fills are that were converted. A lot of the times we'll get fills that come through from these types of assemblies. I could actually change all my fills to, say, just like a red, and that'll make them all just jump out at me. And sometimes there's a lot of fills that are just kind of hidden over certain elements here. And so just by changing those colors on that, we can quickly see what is a fill and what isn't. So, okay, I don't really need the fills in this case because I think every fill has a, actually, you know what, that's actually not too bad. I'm going to leave that, and maybe we'll just turn it as a 25%. Maybe instead of red, we'll go something a little nicer like blue. Sorry, we'll make that transparent. Change that to blue. Okay. So there we go. Now we have our fills in there, and we'll just leave this, I think, for now. So, okay, so at this point, what I really want to do is we have this in here for reference. We can, of course, check our scales on this. I mentioned before that a lot of the times these scales can get off a little bit from our center point. So just snapping out here, excuse me, I'm going to go from this point and pull this out. And so I can see that even that might have, it's kind of tough to tell exactly what that was pointing to because on the PDF we had located it directly on that center line, but now that it's exploded, some of those points might not have actually been right where we wanted it. But regardless, what we can do is we can just measure out and start understanding what some of these scale points are. So if I measure out to that point right there, 118, I can tell that that's off a few feet. This is off a few feet. So everything seems to be a little bit less in dimension than what the actual numbers are showing, probably except for that one that we started with there. So if we wanted to scale this entire thing, we could to any one of those points. Say, like if I wanted to go to that 262, which might actually be a better working point. It's always a challenge when you're working with some of these charts that one scale doesn't match the other, because we could take this entire thing and rescale it from our center point to any one of these points, and it doesn't guarantee that the dimension to the others is going to be the same. So if I come out here, go to 262, that gave us a scale so that now this one is correct, or accurate to the point that we started with, I should say. But some of these others might not be as well. So we can see that those are still off. So in this case, what's probably more important is that we have just, one scale and really kind of stick with it. So, and in fact, the height might even be the height might even be a better way of, scaling this drawing versus the horizontal in this case. But so what I'm going to do is I will actually probably going to just undo a few of those so that I'm still scaled the same as my PDF, and we'll just continue on using our PDF. So okay, let's get into some modeling now. Enough with this. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to my street view here, or my layout view, and in this particular working file, let me just show how I've set up my stories. So my story settings here, I'd set up based on that other file where I was my platform was about 400 feet in height, and so I went from my street level up to a lower brace level to an upper brace level, and set it up this way. So it wasn't typical to a traditional building, but it was more so just built on the specific stories that I wanted in this project to model different crane components. So okay, so let's just start now with at our street level, and let's just start by figuring out what the size of this crane is. And we're actually going to work everything right around our insertion point. So if I hover over this, we can see that we're at our 0. And so let's just start by understanding what the grid of our crane should be. So let's go into our crane chart here. I'm going to go in and find right here, we see the 7.3 by 7.3. So that to me is pointing out what the center line should be on my grid. So what I will do in this case is I'm going to come in and I will just grab with the line tool. I'm just going to create a X 7'3", Y 7'3", and now I at least have a shape that I can use. And I'm just going to pull this down, and we're going to build everything around this 0 point. So from one side out to the other, we have individual or equal dimensions in every direction. So that's what we want, a nice clean way of just building our components from, so that as we go up from foundations up through our platform, we have everything in the same coordinates and in alignment. So okay, so let's start, and in this case, I'm going to just kind of mimic the chart that we are using. So I'm just going to add a typical footing here, and I'm just going to pull this over, and so I'm going to go with my column tool, and under my favorites here, I'm just going to go in, and under my foundations, I'm just going to grab a cast in place pad footing, and I'm just going to grab the biggest one that I have in here, and I'll just click right there, and that probably actually went and landed on my lower level. Did that not go? Where is it? Oh. So let's check our settings. Oh, I see. That's strange. It was on our upper level. So we want it on our street level. Probably have to go and delete some of those. And okay, so now that we have a crane in here, what I want to do is I really like looking at these at cranes in a section view or an elevation view. So I'm actually going to go, and we have both a section and an elevation, but I'm going to open up with my current view settings, and we can see probably what is that? So okay, so I actually already have my trace reference turned on in this case, and so we can see those our reference right there. So I can actually see those footings that jumped in at the wrong story for us. And so we can see our, our standard or our example structure to the side, and we can also see our footing that we had just added in there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to adjust this up. We'll set this at from project 0. We'll make this about 5 feet deep. Let's turn on our trace reference, and so let's see. I think I had moved this reference. So let's reset to our default position. There it is. In my previous example file, I had moved it. That's why it was up. So because we had located our reference around our 0 point, we can see that now it's in our correct overlay position. We'll have to do some work here because we need a taller crane than for this building than what the chart allowed for. But we can adjust all that later. So, okay, so I can see my crane footing thickness is about the right elevation. It looks like they had it about 6 feet, so I'm just going to plug in -6 feet. And the width on their footing is about, let's see, it's about 32 feet. So we'll just make this footing a 32 by 32 foot square. So, okay, there we go. And we can see that it's partially overlapping here with our mat foundation in this case. So let's go down, and I'm just going to call this cast in place. I'm just going to call it a crane footing, and I can just change this real quick, 32 by 32 by 6. Okay, so because we've dropped that in, and this is a good opportunity to kind of point out some of the properties that are built into this template. Let's just go down and we'll take a look at how this is classified. So it's classified as a column. So because it's classified as a column, and in my property settings, I have a bunch of properties that are associated with the column, we have a ton of data here that we can use for managing this particular element. But in this template, some of the most important ones are just the identification on the classification system itself. And so we have this set to concrete, cast in place concrete, and it's under a specific subcode. So maybe I'll change this to just a crane foundation so that we have a specific subset that will pull this out from the other foundations. So real quickly, I'm going to actually just open up my trade quantity report for concrete, and we'll just make sure that that crane is, that footing is sitting on there. And so there we go. We have our crane footing, and you can see that it's on, you can see I have a bunch of different properties here. Let me pull this over a little bit. And okay, so we have, we can see what type it is. We can see our unit cost. If we wanted to adjust this a little bit, we could, and we can see what our units are. So in this case, we're just estimating this based off cubic yards. We only have one of them. And as I pull this over, we can see what my quantities are and a bunch of other details on that particular element that came out of that base favorite that I had saved there. So we can also see that we have other elements in this model. These are really all just from those from the reference model elements. So it's all merged up right now. If I unmerge this, we can see that we have just a ton of columns and slabs and stuff. We're not really paying attention to those today because those are just the base building. So we could even exclude those out if we wanted to. But we'll leave them for now. But just wanted to check to make sure that our footing is, that we added for this tower crane, is on this trade quantity report. These all link up to an estimate template. That's why I have them all kind of broken out here by specific trades. So that's one of the really cool things about this template, is just the organization of individual reports from the model that spit out into individual bid packages. So, okay, so enough on that. Let's go back. I'm going to close this report, and so let's just go in. I have this on it's on a column foundation layer. I'm actually going to change this to a logistics cranes layer. So I'm now separating that crane from the rest of the elements by just putting it on a logistics layer. So let's go back to 2D now, and let's figure out our next steps. So I'll actually just, what I want to start with in this case, if we look at things in elevation, is let's just start by building our kind of base element here. And so what I'm going to do is I just want to have an understanding of what the the height of that element actually is, so that we can just create a nice clean version of this and just take it and run with it. So just by pulling a quick measurement, I'm looking about 19 foot 2 is about where I want to be on my total height. We can actually see that there's some anchors in there. If we turn off our, actually those anchors don't go in this particular trace reference. I think it was this detail over here kind of gives us a better idea of what those anchors are. So let's start by building our base tower element, and then we can add some anchors to it as we go here. So all right, let's go. And so 19 foot 2 was about what I wanted, so that's the height I'm going to use here. And then once we start adding elements in, then we'll start filling in the details and adding beams and building out that detail, and then we'll convert that into an object and have something that's nice, clean, and packaged up so that we can take it and run. So okay, so let's go back to our street view, and I'm just going to go to a column. And what I want to do here, because I use the column for my footing, and because I don't want a ton of information with the components that I'm building here, is I'm actually going to change my classification from a column, which has, again, if I point this out under our properties, there's a ton of different properties here, as well as a ton of IFC data that I really don't want in this case. Might have to go in and strip that out manually, but if I change this from a construction element, these are all the standard classifications that came in with ArchiCAD 21, but I created an additional custom one here called temporary construction. If I just put this under object component and choose that, then what that does is it really cleaned up all of my properties, so I don't have all those additional fields to worry about. What I do want to do here is I'm going to go into my, this is a lot of old legacy data, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to filter my all these, and I'm going to delete this all out. So delete, I don't want any of this. Filter those. I want to strip this down as much as possible, and I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. And okay, so there we go. So we've just deleted out all that additional IFC data that was in that element before. So that's essentially just setting it back to our normal. And what I can do is I'm just going to put this on a ArchiCAD layer for the moment. And okay, so yeah, I think at this point we are ready to start modeling. So first things I'm going to do is I'm going to just set this to 6 inches, and I'm going to set about the right height. So instead of going with the top and bottom here, I'm going to change this up to our height. And so I'm going to set my height to 19 foot 2 is the value we wanted, and we'll just leave this at 0. And okay, I'm just going to add that 1. Then let's go back to our elevation here. And okay, I can see that that is not where I wanted it, but we can quickly just modify it here, and I'm just going to pull it up. And I always like working with nice clean numbers. So in this case, I'm just going to set this at, pulling that up, 1 foot 4. Okay, so there we go. We have our 1 column in there. And because this is nice and symmetrical, I really only need to build one side of it, and then I can just do a quick rotation. So that's what we're going to do in this case. I might actually just pull this one over so I can build that whole assembly on that side, and then we'll rotate that around. So let's just filter our 3D view here real quick so we can see that. There we go. We got these. I'm going to change this from concrete to structural steel. I'm going to change how it looks. And there we go. So we're starting to look a little better here. Okay, so we'll go back in under my beam. I'm just going to grab this element here, and I think I had already picked up a few of some standards, and I should have used the same thing under my column tool. Would have been a lot quicker for that last step, but I think for these next steps we will be able to get this done quite a bit better. So let's just check our elevation here. We can see what our top and bottom is, and let's just jump here, and okay, I can see that's an angled one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start this from the bottom, and from that point I'm going to pull this down and make that 0. And so from this point, we can just quickly start going through, and we are going to just kind of draw these up. I'm going to make that a slant angle of just 33. Keep these nice and clean if we can, and bring that up, and we'll just do this a few times. And instead of using reduplicating there, I'm just going to grab that one, and we'll pull this one up as well, and we're just going to kind of connect those. That last one looks like it's a little different angle, so we'll pull this down. And okay, so one other thing I obviously see now that I've done this, and in this case I've already screwed up, but what I see is I should have really measured the width on this. And what I can do, instead of trying to snap again to that PDF, is if I come over here and go to that exploded, I can really just snap to the line work here and see what dimension that they were using. So we're going to change our columns in this case to 8 by 8 because that's going to be a little closer to how we want it. So change that to 8 inches, and so that fixed all of that. But of course I had screwed up, and these need to be shorter. So I'm going to pull these up just real quickly. Bear with me. So definitely appreciate the patience, and this being my first live broadcast, I certainly plan on improving in my delivery here. So and I'm also thinking that with these sessions, obviously this can take a long time to really model these elements. I'm thinking I might really try to take the recording and chop it up into might do like a speed recording with it, or there's or maybe break it up into individual sessions where we're talking about all these little pieces of how to build these elements. So okay, so in this case we've fixed those. If I select those, we can see that we have our one single frame there. And just to give this a little bit of, because we have our contours turned on right now, we can see that extra line work there. And so a lot of the times I like really working with these contours turned on and changing our uncut line pens in this case to really give it some flair, and this is the type of stuff that you can do with different line work to kind of start taking things and giving it a more branded look. You can put your company type brands in there and do a lot of different stuff with that. So what pen is that? I think that's this pen. So okay, so there we go. So what I will do at this point is I can actually just take this element right here, this whole assembly, and before I rotate, let's just go ahead and let's rotate. I'm going to do a Control U, and I'm going to do rotation, and we can do distribute, and we can do a minus. We can either do, if I want to rotate it all the way around to my starting point, then I would do a -1 or a +1. If I just go straight around then to this side, then I would just do the 3. So we'll just do it from there. Oh, I can see that that wasn't going to work because we need to rotate to path. And okay, so there we go. And I can see that I'm actually going to have, because I've rotated this around, I'm going to have a duplicate column there. So I need to get rid of that one. And okay, so real quickly, pull our entire model there. Okay, so there we go. I did notice that after I built this the first time, that with these elements, with a typical crane tower element, 3 sides are the same, and one additional side is typically what they call like the climbing side or the jumper side, which actually is where the climber on a crane actually uses its hydraulics to push it up. So in this case, I think all of these 3, if we make them flat, what we should probably do is I would need an exact length on there, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of those, And from this bottom point here, I'm just going to give it some equal spacing. And so I'm going to elevate in this case. I'm going to do a +1, and we'll just do 3 of them here, starting from the top of this one to the top of this one there. So from there, then I know these frames also have a kind of a cross member to them. So I'm going to pull this down, and we'll just create that little brace that I'm talking about. So I'm going to pull this back. I always like using these midpoints. It's super helpful when you're putting together things that are very symmetrical. And so just by real quickly, we can pull this around, mirror that. And I think that's probably good enough for what we want here. So I'm going to use that same command and take it from that point. We'll use the bottom of that beam in this case. And I'm going to pull it right up, and there we go. So, okay, so that's pretty much it for the exterior crane elements. Let's go back to our section view though, because there are some other things going on here. And, okay, so we got all of these, which we'll just group those up on that side. It doesn't want to group for me in this view. But we also have this other structure here, which is essentially a climbing or a ladder system within the cage itself. If I open up this my other example model here, we can actually see that's our climbing unit in there. So we're going to recreate that just real quickly, and then we're going to save this off as an object, and then we'll be able to copy this whole thing up really quickly and really start populating our crane. So let's go back here. And okay, so in order to start this, I'm going to go to let's go to a 3D view. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a bit of an interior structure here. So I'm going to grab my slab, and I'm going to set that on my ArchiCAD layer. And what I want to do is I'm going to just start, and I'm actually going to just start based on my particular grid here. So what I'm looking for is that center point on that column, which I don't know why it's so tough to grab, but I'm just going to pull that over and take it to right about there, 7.3 by 7.3, and then I'm going to just pull that up, and we'll just sit that one on as our base unit on this particular element here. I can see my my height is 1/4 of an inch, so if I do a Control-9, I can do 0.25 here and just lift that up. And so, okay, so there we go. We got at least a base there. And I'm okay with it overlapping here into these other elements. I could offset the entire thing and just pull this into my beam or frame structure, but there's I mean, you can play with this type of detail and get it however you really prefer. What's nice about this is you can just spend as much time as you want really detailing this out once, and then you know, building you know, a super custom stylized branded crane for yourself. So okay, so next step here is I want to build this platform up here, and it looks like it's got a little bit of a railing there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 3D here, and I'm going to take a beam. I'm just going to pick up the settings on that, and what I want to do is I'm just going to use a square setting here. Oh, come on. That's weird. It's not letting me go to my rectangular. Might have to go back to 2D for this one. So under my beam, that is so strange. Why is that not letting me go there? I don't understand. Let's try something else. Maybe it's a layer thing. I have no idea. Let's put it on the cranes. Beam. Oh, I'm giving up. Let's go ahead and we will draw these out real quick. So from here, again, I can use that same rotation and -1. So if I take this and just rotate this all around, it should all mirror up, and I'll just group this. And so there we go. Let's I'm going to just grab that much of my project. And okay, so there we have this. We have all of that there, and in our elevation we can just kind of fade this out a little bit more, and I'm going to pull this down and drop that right there. And I'm going to actually set all these. Sometimes with these things, I also want to be very, I want to pay attention to what my units are over here. So I'm going to just set this as 15 feet, drop that down slightly, and 14 foot 6 in this case will give us a little thicker beam there to work with. So now we've created a beam that's right at 15 feet, and that's going to be our beam for our platform there. So let's go back to 3D. There we can see it. So okay, so we can also take this beam, and I can see right now that it's really just kind of fitting pretty much right inside of my external bracing in this case. So, and by the way, I'm navigating here with a 3D mouse. I didn't mention that before, but definitely makes it a lot easier to be able to grab things and navigate at the same time. So definitely recommend getting one of these. Let me pull up the properties just so you can see what it looks like here. Come on. Properties. Nope, doesn't want to do it. Might be behind it. There it is. So that's what I'm using, is just the Space Navigator. So I would recommend getting one if you can. It's only about $100 and makes your workflow so much easier and cleaner. So, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my elevation, and let's add in a few little railings here. So I'm going to pull this one up. 1'6" is where it looks to be about, and I can add in a 4-inch right there to shrink that up, and I'm going to make this 2 inches. And so my width is a little cleaner. And before I adjust this up, I'm going to go back to my 3D and just see that, okay, yes, it is kind of connecting to that frame there. I'm not sure what that detail actually looks like on these actual elements, but that's close enough for now. You know what? I screwed up because I copied, or I moved without copying. So let's come back down here. Sorry about that. Let's go in and change these again. 13'6". Okay. And I think we had one more in this view, so let's pull this up. So we'll go up 1'8" is about where it is. What happened there? So D, actually about 1'7", puts us right on that point. Okay, so we now have kind of the base of what we want for that internal structure. Let's go ahead and we'll add in the ladder, and we'll probably need to cut out a piece of this so that we have an opening for the next elements coming up. So let's go to our elevation, and in order to build this ladder, I'm just thinking here out loud what the best way is to do that. I think what I did on this one over here is I had just done it with individual beams and columns, which is probably the best way of doing that to get that angle. So I'm probably just going to start with creating 2 columns that give me that angle, and then we'll talk about getting that cage structure in there after. So okay, so I'm just going to actually grab one of these beams, and I'm going to pull this over, and we'll start right about there, and I'm going to make it about 2 inches wide, and I'm going to pull this down the height to there. And it's always tough. I always screw this up, and I can never get it at the right angle. It's always angling in the wrong direction for me. So even if I hit this one and start rotating it, it's on its axis here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get this going in the right direction, and then I'll adjust it here in the settings. So from here, I'm going to take this, swing it around, and then I'm actually going to push this inside so that it's internal to my structure. And maybe we'll add a beam down there on the bottom. And okay, so let's go back to our elevation. I'm going to grab this, and so Just gonna change my angle on it. Change my starting point first, so I hopefully can get this right. And we'll pull this down, and then we'll extend it. There we go. Do that twice, and right at 78 degrees. And 17 feet as the length. Nice clean number in this case. Okay, so we got that now. And what I'll actually do is I'm going to pull this up, and we're going to add a little beam right across there so that there's actually something that it's sitting on. So, okay, so we got that now. We can add the second version, or the second leg of it, but let's go back to 3D, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab essentially a step component. We'll just pull this over. And let's drop that in and make sure that we're pulling this all the way across. And once we get into a rhythm here, we'll be able to hopefully speed up on this thing. Okay, so we got that beam in there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to elevate about 1 foot, and I'm going to shrink this up in height. No, I don't want to rotate. I want to shrink in height. So we're going to make this 0.5 inches. And we're actually going to take that, and I'm just going to make some quick adjustments here. The length, let's adjust this side first. And we'll pull that over in our section. But I think, probably 2'4" maybe is a good length to have. And let's go to our section here, our elevation actually, and I'm just going to pull this in, and we'll just snap it to right in front, about in the middle. Okay, so let's distribute this up, and there's a few different ways we can do this. Let's just increment, and I'm going to drag. Sorry, we're going to spread 1 foot, and we'll just pull this all the way up, and I'm just going to snap it to about the actually, you know what, to this point up here would be good. But instead of I'm just going to click this for a second. I'm going to hit my control find to see how many elements I have. I have 13 there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete those, and now that I know how many I need approximately, I'm going to use a different command, and I'm going to do the increment, and I'm going to do 13 as my sorry, I'm going to distribute 13. And okay, so from that point, I'm going to just pull it up. And in this case, I want to actually, I wanted to do that because I wanted to snap it right to this point. And that way it has a nice clean landing at the top there. So, okay, so we got a ladder starting to come into place. And I'm going to pull this over and snap that right there. So I got both sides of it. Okay, and all right, so we also have on our second level, we have another ladder. So what I'm going to do, actually I don't need these. I'm just going to grab all this right here, and we'll pull it up, and we're going to snap that to our next level here. So got a little bit off on that. So let's pull that down. We'll have to adjust that beam slightly. And so for these two, instead of having an angle, I'm just going to get rid of that. And then I'm going to pull these down and snap that right to the top there. So I can pull this over and find my working point on my column so I can center that up. And then in this case, again, I'm going to drag, and in this case, I'm just going to spread them 1 foot, and we'll gotta elevate, and there we go. So, okay, good enough on that. Let's get in here, and we can clean up a few of our little issues. So I'm gonna pull that one back, Going to pull this one back. Okay, and we need to create an opening in this element. So what I'll do is I'm just going to grab a corner. I'm going to hit my minus. I'm going to go to about, oh, let's find a good intersection. So probably about right there. And we'll just pull this over. We can always adjust this just by grabbing particular points and pushing and pulling around. Probably not going to have this on this side, so we'll pull this out. And what would be nice is having one more brace right there. So what I'll do is just add, we'll just take one of these that we had on this side. That ladder probably could have been cleaned up, but it's okay. Come over and we'll just snap that to that point. Okay, and yeah, we're fine with that. That works. Okay, so last part here is we did have, there's a few more details that we can add. If we go back to our elevation, this is really our best representation or our best reference for understanding what goes into these main tower components. So next up, let's actually, we can add the pins that go in here. So we will do that for each side, but let's finish off this, this ladder by adding in a cage. And how I'm going to do that, let's see, I just want some verticals, and let's do that from a plan view here. So what I'm actually going to start with is I'm going to take these columns, and I just want to get the right shape started. So because really what these columns are is they are going to be essentially a support structure. So I'm actually going to shrink these down just a little bit more to 1 inch. And what I'm going to do is to give it a nice kind of clean round shape, I'm going to pull this out, and I'm kind of guessing right now it would be nice to have a center point to work with. So from here, I'm just going to grab my center point, and okay, so that's about what I want. So from here, let's just take these, and I'm going to rotate, and we will give it, we'll distribute, and we'll do, I don't know, let's do 4 of them. And we're going to start from our center point here, and so we can rotate like that. And okay, so there we go. And let's give it a cage. And so what we're actually going to do is let's use our morph tool in this case. Do I want to use a morph? No, I don't. Yes, I do. Let's try a morph. And what I'll do is there's a ton of different ways that we could create this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to undo that last one because I do want to rotate this. I didn't rotate that last one to path, so I'm going to rotate this to path. I think 3 is going to be enough. And this is going to give us a little cleaner line for drawing our shape on. So, okay. Actually, we could do this with anything. We could do this with a slab. We could do it with a beam. Let's do this with a beam. I just realized now why I couldn't get on these, and that's because I was on an angle. You can't use these other features when you're on an angle. So I missed that earlier, but I'm glad I realized that now because that's going to make this much, much easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from center to center on these, and we can adjust the size of this afterwards. So we'll do that, and I probably needed to add one more on that last side. So we can grab our center point here, pull this over, and then we'll add a point. There we go. Okay, so we got our shape of our frame. I'm going to make this just a 1/2 inch, even less than that, 1/4 inch. And then let's push this out. Let's extend all these, and we'll just stick it right there. That's not coming together perfectly, or as nice as it could. But let's just see what this looks like at this point in time. We're going to have to adjust all these columns, but that's okay. So I just want my main components here. We'll grab all of these, and I'm going to do an F5 to jump to 3D. Okay, so at this point, I probably need to understand or need to measure my height of, what my overall height on this needs to be. So I'm going to just guess for right now that it might be about 12 feet. And I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to pull this down. And we might be varying or straying a bit from the reference that we had to work with, but and these might not even be might not even be big enough for us, but we'll just see. I'm going to make my height of those just an inch. So if I put 4 inches here, that'll change that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate, and we'll just do 3 copies. Take it down, snap it right there. And I probably could have used one more. Okay, so there's at least a cage, and hopefully this is somewhere close to how we want it. I'm actually going to just group this for the moment, and I'm going to pull out a copy here, go 5 feet, and let's just convert this to a morph. So converted, and let's union it. And okay, so now we have one object as a that can work as that cage. And let's go back to our elevation and see how far off we actually were. So I'm going to pull this down. Okay, that's actually not too bad. If we angle this, we're actually looking pretty close. So I'm okay with that, actually. We have a few more supports in there than what they had in their version, but in terms of the total depth, that's probably about where we wanted it. So so this old one, I could either stick it on an archive later and hold on to it for later, or in this case I'm just going to delete it because I don't really have any other purpose for it at the moment. So okay, so let's go back and we'll come in here, and let's see, it's 12:20. We've been going for about an hour 20. Yeah, if there's any other questions, we only got a few people online right now, which is okay because we're planning on recording this, and hopefully some people will watch it later. But if you have any questions on what you're seeing or just want to make any comments, then let me know. Definitely would like to get some input and some feedback, of course, is always good. So okay. So let's see. Let's open this all up, and I can see that I messed up by not having that. All right, instead of I should have copied this when I moved it instead. So we need to get these lined up. Okay, and we're almost done with this one. So this is certainly taking a little bit more time, but okay. And I'm going to do a quick grouping on these. I'm going to group that, and I'm going to just pull this out of my brace on the side there. Pull that over a few inches. And I'm going to grab this entire thing as well. So we'll just grab all of these. Including our cage, and I'm just going to pull this off to the side as well to just get it out of that frame. So okay, there we go. That's good enough for now. I could keep messing with this and just keep pulling things over to open that up, but okay, so that looks pretty good. We could then fly through, a little claustrophobic in there, but it's okay. It'll work for the moment. And okay, so I think some of the last details we want to add here are just the pins to give it a little bit more character and flare. And so we'll do that by actually we'll grab a beam here. I'm going to pull this beam over. I'm going to snap it to that side. I'm going to make it just about the length of our column itself. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit longer. So I'm going to make this a total of 10 inches. Actually, we'll do 9 inches. And because we have a column on each side, or sorry, because we have a pin and we want it to stick out on each side, I'm going to push this back just 0.5 inches. And let's we got to change this. Let's make this a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to a custom profile, and I have a solid circle element here, and that is a very, very tiny little circle here. So what I can do is I can grab the corners, and let's just make it maybe 3 inches by 3 inches in this case. And let's change the color of this so that it pops out. Let's just make this like a black. Okay, so we got that in there, and if we go to our elevation, you can see it's right there. We need to get rid of that color because that doesn't look very good. And okay, so we can then start snapping these to the points. What I'm actually going to do, because I have this as a reference right now, I can come way over here, and they actually have center points here, so I can use these as just a guide. But instead of going 1 foot 11 and 1/16, let's just go 13 inches. Nice even number. And okay, so we got those two there. Let's go back and let's get our top pins in place. So I'm going to actually just kind of freestyle these, and I'm going to push one down 6 inches from the top, and then from that I'm going to go 8 inches. So get rid of this one. Okay, so I think we're about there. I'm going to group all those. If I go to group them here, you can actually see that they're getting cut by that column, which is fine because it's really just more for a visual anyway. But we could probably change those to just by changing our layer. That might make them solid, maybe not. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will do a rotation so we can apply these to every side. So I'm going to do a rotate, and I'm going to rotate the path with 3 of them. And because I'm using the -1, I'll just do the full 360. So let's go from that point out to here. And you can see if I go right from the top, we can see them all just... Did I not get my right point? I don't think so. Something happened there. Those are off. I think my center point for rotation there was not right where I wanted it to be. So let's try this again. I thought I had snapped right here, but I guess I didn't. Oh. Showing how not to do it. One more time. Got to go all the way around. Come back. Okay. There we go. These bottom ones down here, I'm not liking how they are sitting in my brace. So just grab those and do a Control-9 and just go up 1 inch. So we're breaking from our reference, but that's okay. Okay, so there we go. I'm gonna give this morph a different line pen just so it stands out a little nicer. And okay, so we are looking pretty good. Let's at this point, this is enough detail, I would say, for what I want. There's actually one more thing I need to do here. I need to carve out this point because this is going to really be our reference for the next level up. So this is going to be where you climb through from one to the next. So, okay. And yeah, we're looking pretty good there. So at this point, we are going to save this out as an object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this entire thing, and I'm just going to hit F5 here. And what we will do is, in order to save this as an object, we just need to, for one, we need to be in our axo view. So now that we have this flat view, we can then, I love using this look perpendicular to click surface, because we can just click on a surface and then we can see it right directly from the top. And so this has, we can see our entire element there. We can easily select everything. And then our next step here is, let's just do a file, and we're going to save selection as an object and hit OK. And okay, so here we go. So you can see what I have in my embedded library in this case. And I've actually because I created a bunch of elements from this, from the previous, or from just building the example file from this, you can see that I have all these already in here. I actually probably have a tower unit somewhere in here. Let's see, tower segment 9'2". So I'm gonna do this and call this 9'2" R1, or yeah, R1. Okay, so I don't think I already had one in there, but okay. So let's save that. I did have one in there. So let's go ahead and we will replace that. So at this point, we can see what's coming through. Obviously, something had a brick surface within it, so we can just go ahead and I'm just going to change that to a metal. For now, there was a general surface. We can change this all to that. We can see we have the metal perforated, so it's bringing through our perforated grate, essentially. We had our paint for our black ivory. We could actually change that right at this state to like a metal iron. We can always override these things later, but okay, so for now that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and hit OK and save it. And so, okay, so what we can do now that we've created that object is, if we actually go to our object tool here, we can see that by default is our latest one. And I'm going to just come in and change our settings. So I'm going to call this a tower element. And we can give it a height 19'2". Okay, and if I click out here, there we have it. So we can give it a rotation so that it's in the same orientation. And so let's just look at these, compare them side to side here. Thanks, Dave, for the comment. Yeah, it certainly is nice having this 3D connection. It's I think once you see it in action, it will definitely make you want to go out and buy one. But yeah, thanks for joining, and yeah, we'll keep this going here. So okay, so these two side by side, we have all of our individual components, and we have our object over here. So we could start overriding this if we want. And actually, one of the first things that I usually like to do is I like to go in and I like to start cleaning up the floor plan, because honestly, I don't really know if I like how this looks, especially if I'm going to be taking these and if I have a ton of different versions of these on top of itself. It could create a bunch of issues, and not a bunch of issues, it's just going to create a ton of lines. So from this point, let's go in and if we do a Control-Shift-O, it's going to actually open up our element here. And so we can see that this is our tower element, or tower segment, that we just saved. We can go in and we can actually see our parameters here. So all of our different surfaces, our different pens, our building materials, and we can always go in and change this directly from here. But we can also go down here to this 2D symbol, and that's really what I want to look at right now and really try to understand. So one thing to note is our insertion point is this corner. So it's starting at our bottom left corner and working out from there. So, and what it's actually doing is we need to think about the overall size of this object. You know, even though we were building it centered on our 7'3" grid for the center of these objects, we actually now need to really make sure that we're managing the object from the overall. And because we have these little 1/2" pins sticking out, that's really something we need to just be aware of. So if I pull this out, I can actually tell that we're going to be right at 8 foot even. So if I hit an X here, 8 feet, Y, 8 feet, we can actually start drawing in this 2D symbol view of our object exactly what we want. And so what we can also do here is we can just start giving ourselves a little bit of some guides to work with. So I'm just going to start creating a bit of a structure here. And okay, and what I'll do is, what I typically like doing is I like to, okay, so I got my base outline in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull everything out, and I'm just going to pull it out exactly 10 feet to the side so that I can take elements from here and start bringing them back in if I want. So, because if I start grabbing these components, this is really what is going to be shown on our floor plan. So, so if I want, I can just do kind of a hover around this and see all the different pieces. Or what I could do is I could just start creating a few fills here and drawing some fills over the top and really simplify this just by tracing out some of the main elements that we had from before. So all these fills, I could then just pull this right back in and go to 10 feet and set that directly back in. I'm going to get rid of that one now. And so we can also, like having my center working points just lined out. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a few X's here. And what we can also do is, this is a really good time to use the hotspot tool. And we can actually just take our hotspot and drop them in at each of these components. Because I'm using red lines right now, these red hotspots aren't going to show up. But if we hover over this and grab all of our lines, and we can actually even delete them, we can see those hotspots. So now we got all those. We can, if we wanted to just do like very simplified line work instead of having all these beam elements and everything, we could just do it that way. So this is now just, you know, crafting the 2D version of this, which is pretty nice because instead of having, if I grab, let's just do a comparison here. If I grab all of this and I do my control find, I can see I got 923 elements within this selection. If I grab these over here, I have 13. So we're just simplifying our object in our 2D view so that we don't have, you know, 1,000 elements multiplied by, you know, 20 tower segments if we have 20 in our crane. And this just really simplifies, you know, the 2D performance, and it makes it so that we don't have a ton of elements on top of each other. But I do probably want just a few here to maybe kind of grab as a reference. So I'm just going to grab kind of the outline of my my frame here, and I'm just going to pull those over, and you can see that all of these are really individual lines, so it definitely splits things up a bit. Maybe we'll just use a fill, and we're just going to copy over this. So we'll take 2 fills and make our stair out of that. So again, I'm just pushing this back over 10 feet, and maybe we'll just grab one of these lines, go back 10 feet, and let's close this up. Let's make this a color we can actually see. And from here, I'm going to just drag, and I'm going to spread. What do we want to do? Let's just give ourselves like 8 of them. So there we go. Now it looks like a ladder. And I think that's good enough for now. I think that essentially works for what I want to see. So, okay, so what we can do is I always like to back this up. So I can take this and just do a Control X. And I'm going to save this right now because that's going to save our 2D view. So if we actually close this out, and we'll just double check and save this, go to our street view. There we can see that that just updated now. So now instead of having all that detail, we actually just have a few elements. And I still have in my clipboard the my actual, or the 2D line work from that object that got converted. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that in here, and let's just drag it, and I'm just going to stick it off to the side here just so that it's there. You could put these on, maybe that's better to put it on a separate one, but we'll just save it there for now because these sections don't really mean anything to us, or they're not a big deal. So okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just save this. And okay, so now instead of using all of these elements, well, we can still leave those there for now, that's fine. But what I'm going to do is let's go back to 3D. Let's get to our perspective. And I'm going to take this and I'm just going to snap this up from that point because we created those points right there. That should all work out and match up nicely with our elements, even our pieces in our object that are overhanging. So, okay, so that works out pretty well. And so at this point, we are pretty much ready to fly on creating this overall tower element. I could do a few things to copy it up. Either I just, let's just see how tall we need to go on this building. So let's just double check that this is 19'2", 19'2". So we can certainly just elevate. So we will elevate. We're going to spread 19'2", and we can just take this and just go with it. So there we go. So that's pretty much as tall as we need to go. And right now all of these are still on our first story. So we could actually, instead of doing that, let's try something else. Let's I'm just going to do this. I'm going to copy up one, and I'm just going to change it from the street to our lower story, our lower brace, up to the next level. I'm going to do the same thing for the next one, the upper brace, and from there, then at least I got a few that are on different stories, so we can kind of do these in groupings. So I'm going to elevate this, and let's just elevate it up to about where we want it here. We can see that we need to make a slight adjustment. Bring it up, bring it down, snap it. Okay, and do the same thing here. And take that and drop it back down. So, okay, so now we got our base element, so that's pretty nice. And we could then start really creating a whole bunch of other components. So what I might do here is, so we can see all those elements are now right on there, and there's a bunch of them. And I can see that that is actually off a little bit. My 2D got off slightly. Squeezed it out. I'm not sure why it did that. That's interesting. But I think in 3D we're fine, so that's something I could probably need to go back and do a little more research on why that 2D got shifted. We could go back into our element and play with it. 2D symbol. What is going on here? I don't know. I'll have to play with it. not within this session. So, okay, so let's go back to, that's actually really going to bug me, but that's okay. Okay, so let's add in a few more components here, and so let's do our base plates. So, or not our base plates, our anchors. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one of these columns that we had, and I'm going to drag that down, and I'm going to pull this up, and we'll just make it the height maybe about 6 feet. And I'm going to change the color on this just so it kind of stands out from everything else. And this footing, let's just, I think I have one here that's transparent. Okay, so there we go. So just like I built this individual crane element, there's a lot of, we could do that for each and every individual element along this entire crane. You know, there's a bunch of different parts here. Let me just close this. Let's go back to our elevation. So there were a bunch of parts that I wanted to show, but just based on timing here, we're going on almost 2 hours. I did want to get to several other things. So maybe we'll start bringing in some of these other object components. And I did want to show how to do some of the trace overs in section here. So let's go back and let's use the morph here. I think the morph is going to be a good thing to kind of trace over, and we can do that for maybe some of these upper elements here. So let's see, I'm being indecisive on where to go next. Let's actually do this. So I want to talk a bit about reporting in this live stream. And now that we have all these elements that we've created, let's make sure that those are reporting how we want them to be reported. So I'm just going to grab all of those. I have 21 of those elements, and they're all objects. And let's go in here to my classifications. And these were already set up from, because we were using individual components for all of the pieces that we were building these with. There wasn't any properties here to really be adding to be using. We wanted to really strip those out. But now that we're actually have an element that we want to then schedule, we can, by taking these elements from object component, adding it to a logistics, it turns back on a bunch of our properties here. So in this case, some of this stuff is already set up for me. I already have these set up under a general requirements tab. I have it under construction aids, and I have it under cranes as my subset here. So with this information, what that's going to do is essentially add that. I think that's the right criteria for hitting my trade quantity here. So let's go to my temporary facilities, and I can see under this schedule here, I have my home story. So I have tower elements under my home story. I have 11 of them. I have 9 of them from my lower brace, and I have only 1 of them from my upper brace, because that's where we had really stopped right there. So at this point, you have a bunch of different ways of either pricing this for purchase or for rental. In this case, I would set this most likely to a rental, and actually just go in and plug in the values that I would want to use for tracking those. So if I unmerge all these, we can see that there's our entire list of all of them. And if we're doing it based off month, essentially what that would be is we want to set our duration here. So if we were charging $500 per unit for these, let's get another 0 in there. And maybe that's way too much. Maybe it should be $250. We can change all those as at once. And change our duration. So if it's going to be up for 12 months, then we'll just plug these in. And that's essentially how we can plan the duration. So when we actually go to price this out, it would be looking at the unit cost, how many by how long would give us a total for this. So So Dave, I see your question there. Is there an option to place elements on a high ref level? Yeah, we can do that. We could certainly add that to the top, but because sometimes there's so many different things on these cranes, you'll see in a second, I'm going to bring in some reference content. We want to keep that tower platform pretty clean. So we could, we of course could move these up and down to different stories if we wanted them to show up on different stories. But okay, so where did we leave off? So let me go in and let's just talk real quickly about these, how this scheme setting is set up. So in that case, we're just pulling all types with this one general requirements category. So that's really how a lot of my trade quantities are set up, is just trying to use the highest level possible for pulling these things through. But you can see a home story, subsets. A lot of these are actually just property data. This one is actually a IFC data that I set up in the scheme to pull through several different quantities, whether it's length or height or whatnot. So let's just go ahead and we will leave that. And okay, so let's try to speed up on creating these elements a little better. So okay, so at this point, what I might start doing is, because this would take some time to really detail out all of these components, what I'm going to do is, because I have this whole assembly as an object saved, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that all in as an individual object, and then we'll spend a little bit more time modeling out just the jib in this case, and we'll talk about using the morph tool, because the morph tool is really great for modeling over these types of things. So we'll do a little bit of detailing on that, and then yeah, maybe we'll wrap things up after that, and we'll export a few. We'll export this to Google Earth and try to cover some of those other things that we had in some of the learning objectives for today. So yeah, of course, if I wanted to locate this on the top level, I would just change that to my tower platform, and then I can just pull that back down. So that would then add one more here under. Oh, I already had one on my tower platform. Why did those? Where's my upper brace? I don't know. Lower brace. Yeah, I thought I had done that right, but I messed something up there. There's our tower platform. I could take all of these, change that to our upper brace, bring those back down, and then there we go. Okay. So next step, let's go ahead and let's bring in, let's see here. So actually under my lower brace, let's spend a few minutes, and I've saved off already in this, in my episode file, I saved off some modules. So one thing that we could do is we could just take in a tie-in assembly, and we should be able to just drag and drop this right in, and it's all kind of right on top of where all my different components there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hover over this, and let's just we can just add a brace in just by simply coming in, snapping it. We need to find a nice center line here to get that lined up, and we'll see if that one lines up. That looks pretty good. From this corner here, 3 inches, a little bit more than that now. Okay, we could just push this over. Okay, so just as quickly as that, added through a module a brace. So let's see where that ended up. I probably dropped that in on the wrong level. Let's just set this at 0. Why is that right there? All my pins stayed down there. That's kind of weird. Okay, well, grab those separately. And yeah, not sure why those came in so low. But we'll just pull this up, and with that, we can, where'd they go? There we are. Elevate those up just slightly. So what's nice about these is, well, I can actually see that some of this stuff, some of these got pushed down. So we can then, of course, go in and make our adjustments. It's kind of interesting how some of this came through as a save morph, and I'm not sure if just by changing the elevation there, if that kind of reset everything in relation to its own the story that I was moving it to. But yeah, the different element types. Yeah, well, all these are morphs, so they should have all moved at the same, but it's okay. So anyway, where are we? Yeah. Okay, so if, depending on what, your structure would be that you're attaching to, you can adjust all these as needed. So that's kind of why it's nice to bring things in as modules, is because then it's, instead of having it all as one object, which I think I do have saved out as well, you can then go in and say if you needed to shift one of these and for whatever reason you couldn't have this right there, it had to be over, another 5 feet or so, we could then take these and locate our point, and in our 2D plan, let's go there under our 2D plan, then grab this and give it a little rotation to point right back where I wanted it there. Grab this whole thing and rotate that by finding those center points and just quickly modifying this. So pull this down, and let's see, that's not going to quite be able to duplicate there, but I would need a smaller piece here. What I could do is I could just simply split this for now, and I could pull this over to get those to match up. So not 100% perfect, but close enough for what we're looking for. So okay, so there we go. Let's so that adds in a brace for us. One of the other things that I talked about up front was some of the layout points, and so maybe now what might be a good time that we can let's take this anchor point, and I'm going to just take it and move it up to my lower brace level. And from this anchor point, what's cool is I could then just grab it right from that center point, and I could then just locate it right where I have these my working points. And probably doing this in 2D is a little bit better. So yeah, so you can do this for any, with these coordinate points within ArchiCAD, you can do this for really any type of trade you'd want to go and lay out. So that's just adding 3 anchor point ties right there as just, working points. And these will actually show up if we go to our, I have a report here for layout points. So if we go here, I can see I have a number of different points in here, but under my lower brace, under my logistics, I can see I have a group under logistics, and I can see those 3 anchor points that actually have the coordinates for those. So all the other points were down on the lower level, and we can see the Z value for all those is at 0. And then we just added those 3 crane control points. So it's really as simple as that. These points are just the I found that the coordinate dimension, the version 17 is actually one of the better ones for this. I think some of the newer ones, they changed some of the functionality. It was a little bit tougher to get the coordinates in the X, Y, Z to actually come out. But yeah, anyway, let's keep going here. Let's see. Let's go up and let's start adding some elements to the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this up, and let's just add a few other elements. So as I mentioned before, I did save off a few others. So let's add in, let's see, There's quite a few in here. Let's add in, I'm looking for the slewing support. So what this is this is essentially what sits right on top of the crane, or of the tower itself. And so that should, yeah, that looks like that's pretty close. Let's go to our, we are on our tower platform. So let's go up to our tower platform and let's just make sure that that's directly on our point. I can see that it's actually shifted just slightly because I didn't get that placed just right. So there we go. This one I actually had already gone in and I had changed. If I go into this GDL object, I'd already gone into my symbol here and I'd already kind of create a cleaned up version of this because I had built this with several different tools and with morphs and slabs and a number of different items. So for this, what I would want to do is, if I go to my south elevation, I just want to go in and let's just drop this down so that it's sitting right where we want it, right about there. Okay, so we have that. I'm actually going to take this and I need to make sure that I call it what it is. A slewing support is that element. And so I'm going to add a few more objects in here. One of them I'm going to add is, just by copying this, I'm going to change my object to a, I think I have a climber in here, or a climbing unit top. Let's add that in, and need to find our center point. So there we go. This is a top point there, and so that actually mirrors up and matches right there. So I think we might be off in our plan view though. So let's grab this and want that center point. And okay, so there we go. So now we have a climber that we just added. And one thing to note on the climber is there's an opening right here, and that's where essentially you would be adding new segments in. So you always need to have, I think, that pointed in along the face of the building. You couldn't have it pointing in because you couldn't jump against it, and you need your jib assembly to jump it as well. So you kind of have to have that. You need to have that pointing off in one specific direction. So and actually on this climber, this it's a very basic representation of it, but that's actually supposed to be a hydraulic unit that would be climbing up along this ladder right here. So that's why I did that in the beginning. But okay, let's keep going here. So let's add in under this climber. Because I'm taking an object and copying it around, and they're all going to come through with the same settings. But what's nice about that though is if I go to my go back here to our temporary facilities, we can see that we are now adding additional elements. So we do have, by adding in that morph, we have our tower element. Sorry, when we added that module, we added the anchor shoe, we added the collar, all the different pieces of that tie-in assembly, and those came in with each of their own, elements, and some of the durations probably need to be, well, that one I think we're pricing it by each, so it's not based on months, so duration doesn't matter, just on how many, because those are the connections. But yeah, so we can see that this is now populating with more and more elements. And let's go ahead and let's add in our top element here. So I'm just going to copy that, and I think I have where is it? I think I called it a cabin or something like that. Counter jib. Tower. I don't know. Maybe I didn't save it off as an object. I thought I did, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I just saved it as a module. Well, in that case, let's delete this one and let's go see if we have a module for it. Complete jib assembly, cabin, and slewing assembly. That's the one that I wanted. So I'm going to pull that in and I'm going to match up my tower platform. So hopefully this worked just as planned. And okay, so we got a lot of stuff right here, but I can find just by grabbing, looking for that center point. I could grab all this. I'm going to keep it pulled off for right now, just outside of my, actually had some legacy line work over here. I'm going to, let's just grab all this and see if it came in the right elevation. So yeah, so when I brought all those in, this is a combination of, you know, slabs, walls, morph elements here. Created this just from tracing over with a morph. Let me show that here maybe in a second. Yeah, so everything came in at least in the right relation to itself, which is good. So I can group this, and if I wanted to just turn this all into an object, because I didn't do that before, I'll go to a parallel view, and where is it? I'm gonna look right on top, and then yeah, because this is a lot of stuff. So in our 2D view, that might get really congested looking. So this would be a good example of when to create an object. And so let's just save this selection as an object, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to call this full slewing assembly cabin and top. Okay, so now we are saving this out as an object. A lot of stuff in that one, but if we go to our object now, we can then add that in, and yeah, there's a lot going on there. So in fact, I've probably even lost my center point on how I wanted to match all that up. So we could go in and let's just do this real quick. Hopefully this doesn't throw us off too much in our 2D, 3D. Let's go into our symbol, and I'm going to, one thing about this is you can see that I had a slab, I think, as my actual ring itself, our slewing ring. And so it converted all that into individual elements here. So what I want to do is I need to find this center point. And I'm going to do that by snapping over here, one side to the other. And I'm just going to rotate from this center point. And okay, so there we go. So I'm going to grab pretty much all of this right now, except for those two lines that were our center point. And I'm going to pull this off to the side, and we'll just go 15 feet to keep it clean. And so from this point now, I could add a circle for that. I could take could just pick up some of my outlines here. So we could certainly spend a lot of time really detailing this out, but for the moment, I just want to make this as clean as possible. So I'm going to bring this back over 15 feet. So we got the outline. I'm going to just kind of grab. Those are nice points to have because those are going to help us align with some of the other elements that we'll add to this. So I'm going to pull this over. So those are essentially our connection points. So grab those, pull those back. And probably need, I'm going to grab these that are the element that really goes up to the top of the tower so we can get some definition on our overall shape. So bear with me, almost done there. So this is the type of stuff that probably looks and feels much better when doing in a speed modeling type tutorial, but it's okay. Good enough. So pull that over. So that's starting to look more like what we wanted there. And I'm also going to try to create one there. Pull that over. These are the actual units that control the rotation, the motors. Okay, so good enough. I'm going to delete that, and let's just save this, and hopefully that lines up nice for us. So we will close this out. So there we go. That actually, something got skewed there. I think it's probably because I took out some of the stuff that was sticking off on the side. So I think in 3D, everything should still be fine. In 2D, it definitely, doing that cleanup that I just did definitely threw things off, I think, in terms of our scale. So I need to play around with that and get better at that, because that did not work as I had predicted. But let's just take a look at it now in 3D, and let's open up everything. And okay, let's get out of our parallel view so we can actually see what we're doing. There's our object, and we need to dramatically elevate this. Let's pull it up, and then we're going to sit this right back down, just right on top, if I can find that working point. Not happen very easily. So we'll pull that down there. And I know for a fact that that needs to be aligned. Okay, and we got that extra one in the background. We're going to get rid of that. So, okay. But actually, one thing I wanted to point out, if you're wondering, yes, that is actually the guy in the wheelchair that's been converted. But I did put this person in here just as an operator to actually be used for like a monthly time if you wanted to kind of calculate your cost and duration based on an actual labor operator. So that is one reason of having that in here. And we could actually, because this is now all an object, we can only really track one thing with it at a time in our report. And so where was it? Let's make sure it's named right. So this is going to be the cabin. So if I wanted to give a different rental cost or a different cost for this entire unit and break out an operator, I would actually just probably take this guy and leave him in the project, because he actually serves a purpose for reporting and as an operator. So, but for now, let's just get rid of it, and I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. So we'll clean this up. Okay, and finally, get rid of that also. Let's drop this back down. Sit it right there. Okay, so we got a few more assemblies that we can do. Now that we have at least the majority of this crane, let's take a few minutes to actually, let's do a little bit more modeling and look at a few more techniques for creating this jib assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take my trace and reference, and I'm going to actually If I wanted to use this as a reference, use a PDF, then I would just raise it up. But I could also take this line work here and use that as a reference. So maybe I'm going to do that instead. And so I'm going to flip over to my reference. I'm going to switch my views essentially. So I'm going to pull this off to the side. We'll just pull it out a clean 700 feet, and hopefully we'll remember that value later. And I'm going to just around my jib assembly here. Just going to kind of click through and just grab that entire top. So I'm going to grab all of that, and I'm going to, because I traced over this, I think pretty closely the first time, I think I'm just going to take that corner and see if it matches up right with the corner on my cabin here. And let's look at these lines. Oh, they're a little bit off, but the overall, the outside line, this one on the outside, is actually in pretty good alignment with my element behind it. That's slightly off. This is slightly off. Down here, we're slightly off, but overall, I would say that we're okay. Okay, so with that, let's go back, and I'm going to switch now back to my model view. And now I have, as a trace reference, that exploded line work from that chart. So from here, there's a number of different things that different ways that we could just start modeling. Let's just start with the top here. And how I'm going to do that is, I actually want to just start with some of my base elements. So I'll probably just take a beam from my view, a beam and a column. Let's just grab these two, grab those two, and I'm going to pull this up here, and I'm going to copy it. And of course, as soon as I do that, then I would need to change these to my tower platform, and that's going to elevate them. So I should have done that from the bottom there, but we can pull these back down real quick. And okay, so now we have a few elements. I'm going to leave my brace element as a yellow color, but I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to actually just use this reference for snapping, and I'm going to change this from yellow to blue so we can get a little better definition. And I'm going to pull this down, and I'm just going to start by modeling. Oh, wrong thing there. Start by modeling. Come on. There we go. That first base element, and I'm going to take this whole thing and copy it up. And it looks like this one's slightly taller, so I'm going to snap that there. And I'm going to pull this back. And okay, so there we go. We got at least the bottom and the top there. And so what I need to do is I need to now put this in the right orientation in my plan view. So I'm going to take that component, my overall beam, and I'm going to slide this over, and I'm going to just snap that one right there. This one was the shorter one, and that's the center, so that just needs to be right on the center line of this entire thing. This one here, I believe that is the angled one, so I'm going to pull that back and shrink that down. It's currently a square, but we could change that. Actually, we could change that to a column. I think a column is, in this case, is going to be better anyway. So we can grab a column, because with a beam, let me just point this out. So okay, so there's our center. And now, because we have a center point on here, it makes it really easy to then start just mirroring things around and getting everything in right relation. So, but because that is a beam, it's in this case a column would work better as one of those truss members for that jib assembly. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm just going to, I'm going to pick up a column here. And I think if I come up and drop it in right here, sometimes those will, no, that did not work. Need to set this tower platform. I don't think those are dropping in. I think they're all going way down there at the bottom. So, okay, well, whatever. We are going to fly up and down this thing a few times just to get it in the right position. And I'm going to pull this down. And okay, so we're going to start giving this thing an angle. So we can just point right over here. And I'm going to pull this over. And so this is one way of just creating those elements. And of course that's too big of an element. Maybe I'll shrink this down and make this more of a bar joist. So, okay, so there we go. We have both our working points on it, and let's go back. Let's just make sure that for one, what's our home? And of course, it's going to go way up there. So it's one of the challenges with, gosh, what happened there? With grabbing things from different elevations, different story settings, and trying to get them to copy around is always can be a challenge. But okay, let's, so now that we got that back where we wanted it, let's go back in to our elevation, and there we can see it. And so I'm just gonna, you can see that that's coming out from that side. We can angle this over. So doing this type of thing with columns can kind of be a bit of a challenge just to get the right angles on things, because we're gonna have to go back to 3D here and really figure out if this is where we actually want these elements. So we're going to do one this way, and we'll try this a few other ways also, and I'll show you some other tricks that to me are very, very helpful. So let's just snap that one. Come on, get parallel. Saw it for a second. Where'd it go? Well, it's pretty parallel. So, okay, so from this, pull this one back over, and I'm just going to try to keep it in line. I'm just going to snap those right about there. So in elevation, there we go. Still don't have that one right, but in floor plan, I could take that piece and rotate this back, and I could even shorten it up if I wanted to keep it sitting on there. So at this point, I could then start just rotating things over. So it's actually a lot easier to do this in plan view right now, because doing just those quick little moves didn't change our elevation at all. Just snap those over. So this is one way that we could do this, is we could just simply mirror it along there, and then just take this entire thing, and let's go back, maybe not the entire thing. Let's take just these elements here, and I'm gonna pull this over, and let's just go a nice even 5'6", gets us pretty close there. And then if we mirror it right along there, let's just see how that looks. So that's starting to work a little better for us. And then from here, if we, Let's go back to 2D. 2D was working a little cleaner. I'm going to pull this back. Hold these together. So if we go 10 foot 2, that makes it pretty clean. D 10 foot 2. So let's see how this compares now in elevation. We might, obviously we had way more of an angle there. So let's go back. Sorry, let's follow our elevation. And that's why this can definitely be a pain, is trying to get these to line up. So let's see. So from this point, I need to pull that back about 1 foot 8 in plan view. That's probably the easiest way of doing this. So this direction, foot 8. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a guide. Delete that. So how close does that get us now? Pretty much right on. Okay, so I'm just going to take that. I'm just going to copy it around. And so you can see playing with columns to get this to work can be a challenge. I'm going to mirror it right at the end of it. And push that one over just slightly. Just 1 inch. Okay. Sorry, we're taking a long time with this, but it's okay. Let's go 6 foot 10, and I'm going to repeat that just a few times here. 6 foot 10, 6 foot 10, and we probably got one more in here. 6 foot 10, and some of these at the end can start changing in angles. So going to 3D, there we go. We're starting to build that first element. Let's see how they finish it off in their elevation here. So they just added one more, so we can do that also. And we'll just do it from the top. And at that point, we're just going to have to pull it back, and we'll just make it match about where we want it here in plan view. Okay, let's mirror. Okay, so there we go. We got that first jib assembly, and let's add just a little bit of detail here. And this is where I really like using our section tool and creating a section. Let's give this section cut a full visibility across the whole thing just by adding that. Oh, that did not work. Why did that not work? Continuous, marker, continuous. There we go. So wherever we drop this in, it's going to essentially act as our plane for how we can draw over it. And so I'm going to come back here, and let's add a little bit of detail here on these connection points. So this is the perfect time to take a morph tool and just literally just start copying around, and I'm going to try to see exactly where I want it here. And I'm just going to close that off, and we'll give this a bit of a radius. And okay, so there we go. So there's one. So where is it is the question. There it is. It's way out there. I think I was drawing on an elevation, not that section that I'd moved. That's why. So we can go back and let's just change this to black, and we'll just give it like a, I don't know, a 2-inch depth in this case. And this element is most likely just welded right to that point. I should have given myself a little bit more of a buffer on this itself, and in retrospect, yeah, that probably wasn't the right point to start the width on that. But that's okay. For now, I'm just going to leave it. And I'm going to just pull this out. And those are overlapping, but it's fine for the moment. Not that concerned with the details. Let's just, let's continue on and go back to this now. We can then take this element. Let's not do that. Let's close this section. Sorry, I'm going to go to my 2D view and I want to get on my section. Open with current view settings. So I still got my trace reference on this, so we can still see it there. Okay, but now we're going to be drawing right on our views. So at this point, let's go, and I'm just going to give this guy a little bit of a detail for that hinged element there, and just radius that out. This guy up here, we'll just add that as well. So this to me is one of the best uses for morphs, just going in and doing this type of detailing. Because after you add it in, and we can do, we can add, in this case, I think this is the trolley. The trolley are these elements here. So that's the trolley drum that I think runs that line and pulls it back and forth. So there's two little circles here. So we can give a bit of definition. And okay, so with that, we can jump back to 3D. Let's push these a bit. I'm just gonna make it, we'll just go 2 inches, and what we could do with this now is I could select this face, and hopefully this works out for me. We'll offset a copy, and we'll go 3 inches, and then this face, let's just pull that maybe, I don't know, 4 feet. And so from this face now, we could offset another copy, go back 3 inches. No, that did not work. No. Let's try this one more time. Yeah, I think it's only going to do the line for me. I don't think it's going to do the full face. So, okay, well, what we could do in that case is let's just push this back slightly, and I'm just going to mirror 2 feet. And to get that full 4 feet that we had, I'm just going to mirror it that way. And then let's just union that. And then in 2D, probably the better for finding that midpoint, we'll just pull this over. And I don't know what the size of this actual unit is, but at least that's adding a little bit of just a little detail. So not sure about that one either. But okay, so let's do, okay, so here I'm gonna just set this as, we'll just go 1 inch, and I'm gonna make essentially a joining connection. So I'm gonna copy one and push it over, and let's see. So to put those on the center line here, I know it's going to be slightly off because I need to just balance these. So we'll pull this out just 1/2 inch, and that should be pretty much right on. Okay, and finally, this little guy here, we'll just push that 2 inches, and that works for that assembly. So, okay, so let's go and we can take this and mirror it across. So now we have that one. And let's add, we'll do this in 2D. we'll just add a bit of detail here, some cross bracing on this, and we'll finish this out. And then we're going to do this a totally different way. What did I do? I think I did. We'll go right about there. I'm going to take this and rotate it just to get a little bit more detail here. And then all of these, I think most of these should be, if I just go from that center point, should stick them on, and we'll just make an adjustment on this last one to pull this back. Okay, so there we go. Let's check that in 3D. So there's our assembly for that particular element of the jib. And okay, so that's one way of doing it. Let's quickly look at another here. And this next one I'm going to do pretty much in all morphs, except for these three elements. I'm going to keep my, essentially the main frame of my trusses there. I'm going to keep those all about even. I'm going to delete that one because we're going to resize this one over here. So let's open up this section. I'm going to pull this over and I can just snap that right there. And I'm going to shrink this one up. So, okay, this one we are pulling back and extending this a little bit. And we'll extend that. Okay, so this time, instead of trying to play with those columns, which were really a pain, let's just play with the morphs, because this is honestly a really great way of using morphs. And we can just real quickly, instead of going through that whole headache, we can just simply connect from one point to another. We can give it a width of maybe 4 inches in this case. And okay, so from here, all I would have to do is just take that one, grab that one select line on that morph, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull this over. And so now all we need to do is take it from our section and then move it into place, and then we can really fly with this thing. So, so I'm going to just grab all those elements, go here to 3D, get this on the right side so that it's right where I want it. And then I'm going to take this component here, and I'm just going to push it in plan view straight over. And there we go. So now that what that does is that gives us just a single plane versus an entire column with a whole bunch of different elements. So if we go to say like wireframe, you can see that we got a ton of different elements all throughout this entire assembly. But this one would really clean it up. And if we're concerned with how many polygons we're creating, we can do it this way. And it actually, if we change our uncut line pen, what's interesting about this is when you have your contours turned on, the further you get out, the more those contours will really show up. And one thing I noticed about these is when you look at all of our elements on our main tower segment that we built, you can really see those lines pop. If I turn them off completely, then everything just kind of is just yellow and is actual color, but there's real no definition beyond that. So having those turned on really adds quite a bit of definition to it, which can be pretty cool. But what I was trying to get at here is just contrasting the difference between these two. When you're really close, it doesn't really make much, but when you get further and further out, and if I change this, say, to a black background, we can see the difference between that one morph that only had four contour lines on it versus those round elements, which had a ton of contours on it that just actually don't show up when, because it's a round element in 3D. So I think I made that point, maybe not, but okay, so anyway, there we go. We can then just take this and, excuse me, start copying this around, We can push this guy over. We could even give it more definition if we wanted to create that little flattening of the tube. So we could do this again if we wanted to actually get real precise and give it even more of that flare at the end. So that's another way of, it's essentially doubling, or at least our edges. But let's see. Now all we would have to do is, for one, we'll just inject the settings, although that didn't work for our contour pen. Let's go back, change that, and I'm going to pull this over. And again, to change the shape of this, I just need to grab that single line on this element. Oh, you know what? That's not going to work. So what I'll probably do here first is try to give it a rotation. Yeah, adding that little detail there really kind of screwed things up. But let's just find, come on, I had it. This will probably get us close, but we still need to stretch it up to that point. So there's going to be a little bit of playing around with this. And there's probably a much better way of doing it than what I just did. But let's see, yeah, now we're creating more polylines, or more polygons, I should say. So, okay, not as clean. In fact, I don't even like it, because if we went to wireframe with a black background, yeah, just doesn't look as clean at all. So let's get rid of that thing and get back to a view that we can see what's going on. And okay, so that was a waste, but at least we kind of showed the process. So okay, so from here, what I can do is I'll just grab these two, since those are nice and lined up. And I'm just going to kind of drag some copies. I can make some slight adjustments here if I wanted to. And okay. This is all one element here. It's got that top piece where what they call the pendants come down and hook in. But okay, so there we go, and let's just close this off, finish it off, pull this one back, and okay, so let's go to 2D. We can see all of our morphs right there. I'm going to just do a marquee around it and grab all the morphs and grab that also. We will pull this over, and because I know that's about the right shape that I wanted, I'm going to just take this element, swing it around, and aligning that pin is something that we have to do. So if we go to 3D, let's see, F5 to bring everything back, and yeah, wherever that pin ended up, it doesn't really matter. It could be right in the middle for all I care right now. But okay, so there's the two different options for how to do those. Again, you can see those contours really coming into play. If you want your jib to really stand out, kind of similar to how this looked, then I would recommend not using a round item there, or a round element for those. But yeah, okay. So instead of modeling the rest of this, let's just pick off a few things that might be kind of interesting. And so we, of course, could just take this top element, from there, and we could start adding in. I'm gonna make this just make it blue. We could start adding in these top pendants. So pull this over, and I'm going to drop that down. And so we could really start giving it some definition by adding this, which is relatively quick to do. So we'll just make that 6 inches by 4 inches. Tighten that up a little bit. Okay. And let's just continue this down. So there's probably several links in this pendant chain here, but that's okay. We're just going to take it and pull it right there. And then we can also then go back to picking up some of our morphs. And we already have one up here, so that's done. This one right here, let's add one real quick. And so we can just come straight down. And a little bit tough to see what's going on here, but it looks like 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. So maybe the best tool here is going to be this tool, and we'll just go parallel to there. And let's pull this out, and we'll just create a few of these. So there's one. And okay, let's go to F. Sorry. Where is it? There it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this over, snap it to that point, change my contour pen because I don't really want to see yellow. And I'm going to push this out just 1 inch. And let's just rotate it on the other side. Come on. There we go. I'm going to group those. And let's go back to here. Let's make sure we got them both picked up. We only got one, so let's do the Alt-G. No, it's still not going to do it. Probably because I'm cutting, or my section doesn't have the whole thing, but we tried. Didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to pull this down. So we can just keep this going. This is a much longer one down here, so maybe that's not the right thing to do, but let's delete that. Morph. Pull that through. Really need to pick up some different settings on that morph tool if I want these black contours. So, but okay, so we're getting there. So we're out a bit ahead of our jib, but that's okay. What we can do is, because I've saved some objects, let's go in and we did our first 2 jib assemblies. So we did the butt section, we did the jib section 2. Let's go to our jib section 3, and let's just click at one single point, and we can take this and start rotating it into place. And so the best way to probably do this is, for one, need to align this to the center of there, and then let's go to our section. Where are we? And I'm just going to grab that point and so where are we? Jib section 3. 1, 2. I think that's the wrong one. That's not the right one. That, or I have this entire thing rotated. I think I do. Let's go back to 0. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now we're looking a little better. I'm going to snap that right to there. And okay, so that's pretty good now. So I'm just going to copy this over and let's change it to jib section 4. And we can do our alignment on there. That looks pretty good. And we'll just keep this going now. I wish they had that, but they used to have the buttons right here for going from one object to the next. That would be helpful. I'm not sure why they changed that. Okay. Moving right along. Let's get jib section 6 in there. And I can see just very quickly where I need to do my alignment. There's not a whole lot to do there. Jib section 7. That one's good. And okay, we'll close this out with jib section 8, which is just this little end cap. And I don't know if I have it modeled totally right, but close enough for now. So let's check it out in 3D now. Oh, I can see everything is, I was close, but apparently not that close because I am off. So grab my center point and let's do our alignment to right there. And I can actually see that I started this off wrong in relation to my object from later. So this whole thing really needed to be shifted over. And we could do that. There's probably an easy way of doing it by just converting this to an object and then shrinking the object in that direction. But we can give it a quick try here. Should have known when my connection point at the butt end of this was a little too far out. Should have fixed it right there, but okay. Oh well. So at this point, let's pull this over and we will just snap it right to there. I think that's in line. So that's what we should have done on both sides. Now if I start mirroring things around, we're going to start crossing. So I'm going to undo that and we're just going to leave that for now. Okay, so we are getting there. Let's work on the counter jib a little bit. So similarly to this front side, I'm just going to copy one into the back, and I think I've created all the counter jib assemblies. So counter jib, I got the mid sections. I don't know if I saved the I don't have it. It's not here. I forgot to save that one, but I bet I saved it as a well, we'll just pull this out for now. And I'm going to make this the counter jib outer section. So we at least have that one in. And we'll just place a few and then we'll modify. There's our midsection. And those look like they're in alignment. And finally, let's do one more module because I think I did save this as a module. Let's see, counter jib. Assembly. I had the entire assembly. Well, okay. I guess we're going to have to do that and then strip out some of the parts and pieces. Okay. So counter jib, complete jib assembly. Well, that's going to add a lot to this project, but we'll do it just to see how it comes in. So the complete jib assembly, we're going to add that. And there we have it. It's all out over here. So there we can see it. And I even have, I don't know if this is going to work or not. ContraBIM inner. No, that's not going to work. But I can isolate these. And I could have just drag and drop that whole thing into this project, but hopefully you guys are learning something from me going through and stumbling on all these little modeling things that I was trying to show. So hopefully there's some lessons learned in that, but let's just keep going here. Let's grab all this stuff and we'll just grab from there to there. And is that picking up everything? Almost. Let's get out of that view. So we can just, I think I got all that. Need this one and this one. Okay. Isolate. Axo. Top view. Select all. Objects. Save as an object. And ContraBIM inner is what I forgot to say before. So there we go. So we have that now, and let's go to 2D. I can actually see that those objects are not on the right level here. They're all down below, so we need to adjust those, which is going to require just a bit of a elevation adjustment once we move them. So we'll come back up. I'm going to grab this one, and this one actually gets duplicated in this view. And so we're going to have a few right there. Let's just change this to that intersection. There we go. Pull this down. Are these in alignment? I think these got off. Make sure we're centered. Okay, so we'll have to adjust our elevations, I'm sure, because everything is up. But we'll just start with this one. It's pretty close. Let's pull this down, and I'm going to try to align that point with this point. Okay, so that one's pretty close. I'll pull this straight over because we're going to duplicate this one. And then we're going to pull it together with this guy. Okay, so let's see how we're looking in 3D now. We got a whole extra crane in here. We'll say goodbye to that. Actually, you know what? Let's bring that back because we might be able to. We might grab some of these other components and pull them over. Might be quicker than some of the other workflows. So, okay. Almost done here. Okay, so there's pretty much our whole jib assembly. If we turn off our trace reference, we can see that we have everything except for our full base, but we actually have, I'm pretty sure I saved some objects out as these. And what's cool about this is, we'll show this in a second, how to actually create that preview. I didn't know how to do that before, but playing around with it, was able to get that to work. So I'll show you that in a second. So, okay, so from here, let's get to a view where we can actually see what we're doing. I'm gonna fly right into this, and where's my center point there? Okay, so there's one of our anchors, and we'll give this a rotation with 3. So from our center point right here, nope, rotate to path. Let's make sure that we're on it. Having that one slab there kind of makes it tough to. Okay, so there's our anchors. Relabel those. So yeah, pretty much all those objects that I'd copied around need to be relabeled. Definitely going to be saving these out as favorites so that they're a little bit easier to drop in and plug and play, so to speak. That still needs to be slightly adjusted, but we can probably find our working point right about there and just push it over to that center point. Did that fix us? There we go. Okay, so, and then, so this one took not a ton of time. It was pretty much performed or pretty much modeled the exact same way that I did some of these other elements. You just got to slow down and yeah, really look at it. And these are all just built with beams and morphs and a lot of different pieces there. So this is an object. Let's just grab this object from its center point and let's just drag it right over and see if that's on. Pretty much, yeah. Okay, so there we go. We are getting close. There were a few little details here that we could probably add as well. There were some up around this top piece, so you can see how I did these. These are just done with beams, so pretty easy once you kind of get rolling with it. So I'm going to just snap that right to that point. And we can see that these got off just slightly. So let's pull these over. Nope. All these little connection pieces are kind of fun to play with, but in this case they're not quite aligned. There we go. So this one probably should come up. Push that over without copying. And we probably just need one final thing right there. And just for the sake of closing it out, yeah, we'll just do that. Good enough. Okay, so there we go. If you wanted to draw in the actual line, what I would do is I would take this section and move it right to the middle. And under here, what I can do is with a morph, oh, I didn't get those back pendants, but it's okay. So we'll turn this on and we can actually just start from right here. Oh, with my morph, and I'm going to start, and I'm just going to kind of click around, and I can this drum back here is the motor that moves the hook up and down. So let's kind of trace through here, and we will try to get it pretty much right on. So this comes through, and in this case, we want to really be attaching it to this line where we have that element. So I'm just going to stop it right there, and let's change this from yellow to red. We'll make that kind of stand out. Let's change our background to something a little lighter. So on this side, we're coming out here, and let's see, I believe that it just, so it goes down, drops the hook up and down, and I believe that it just stops right at this junction right there. We probably need to add a morph for it, because I don't have that little bar at the end. So I think there's some little bar there that just kind of ties it down. Okay, so that's one of our lines. I'm actually gonna, don't know if I like the red. Let's go to black here. I'll pick that up. And the second one here, I think it just attaches at some of these points, and it actually runs inside the jib itself. And so it's going to be coming all the way back here, and it ties into this one, and I think it loops up and comes all the way over, down, and then just back to the other connection point on our trolley. So I think those are the two. We could certainly go in and add just a little bit of detail here. Just by adding those little circles is going to make this look a bit more realistic. And we know these are right on the center of our jib because we placed our section right on our center. And somewhere over here it's, where did I draw that? I drew it right there. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, so there's the red one that I thought I had changed back to black. And we can see our points in the middle. That's our anchor point at the end. So let's just extend that a foot. And we can center this up by grabbing that point. And okay, so all right, I'm missing that one piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hope that I can snap to a point right here on top. That puts me very, very close. And okay, so that pretty much works. We don't have any weights, so let's grab the counterweights, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball this and snap it pretty much right to that corner. Those sit right on there. That should probably be off the deck. Okay, and let's just go ahead and we'll increment some of these. Not on a rotation, of course, but on a drag. Okay, there we go. And finally, let's just, what else are we missing here? I think there's one more object I want to add, and that's my second brace, which should probably be right around here. So I'm going to change this tower to the upper brace, and then I'm going to actually change this to the brace itself. So I think it's called a tie-in. Where is my tie-in assembly? Collar tie. I think that's the whole thing. It doesn't have everything, but assembly with connection. There we go. Okay, so with that, we are almost there. this center point in this object should snap right to my 0. And so let's pull this up. And we'll just place this right on that deck. Okay. Okay, so there we go. We got a tower crane. We've pretty much duplicated what we had before. Let's see. Let's just isolate this one layer and see what all falls on it. Oh. So I see that there's some stuff that's not on there. So I want to do just a little cleanup and making sure that we got everything on our logistics cranes. So I'm just going to do a marquee around this whole thing. Actually, I'm going to hide this first. Let's hide that layer. That layer. So I'm going to grab this entire thing. Make sure I don't have my grid lines. And we'll just do a Control T. And I'm going to turn it to a different layer. And then hopefully by putting this back on to cranes, it's going to override all those that weren't. So, but that may not have worked. But it looks like it did. So, okay, I'm going to delete out this one. I think we're done with that. I don't think we got pretty much about all the same detail that we had. And okay, so let's go and we can then just export this. So of course we could create views of this. We're pretty much all set up here in our model that we could of course publish this out. But I'm going to just, one of my favorite things to do, especially with a model that's, you know, logistical model like this, is I'm going to just isolate it. And so I just have the model itself. And I'm going to do a file. Let's do a save as. And if we save this as, we have several different options for saving this out. We could save it as an IFC. We could save it as a SketchUp file, a Google Earth file, several different files. But for going to Google Earth, which I like doing with cranes when I'm, you know, wanting some interesting views, is I like using this Collada file. And so let's save that. I'm going to export it to Google Earth. I actually already have one from before, but let's just call this, yeah, it'll be episode 01 Crane Builder without the date on it. And so let's save this. And in the meantime, I'm going to open up Google Earth and kind of get ready for bringing this in. So I think I had one there already. So we can fly in and let's just go to LA because I know there's some good places to drop things in here. So in order to bring that crane in and just place it in relation, this is essentially what I had done for one of those views that I had in the preview. So we'll replicate that process. So once it's saved, which I think it's already saved, within Google Earth, all you need to do is you can just go to temporary places and go add a model. And so we want to go and let's browse for that export to Google Earth. And we can see what size we're working with here. So about 8 megabytes. So that's not too bad. So let's go ahead and open. And this will probably take just a second. I might want to, I can tell that it's working because it's starting to freeze. Okay, so there we go. There's our crane. So with all the detail that we had put into it. So, okay, so from here, we got a few different options for moving things around. We can take this and drag it and move it however we like. We can rotate it by grabbing, there's it's a little bit tough to see on this model because it's just so the orientation of it, but it's usually a little diamond looking thing, and I think it's going to be that one. Actually, it wasn't that one. So what I want to do is, you got to be careful because you can scale this thing and it sometimes gets a little funky when you do that. So I'm going to turn off this. Yeah, see, I don't want to be scaling it right now. That's not what I want. I want to, because I can skew it side to side. I can do a bunch of different things with it. But it's finally showing me my rotation point right there, which is going to be the one that I want to be using. So I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to bring it back in. And it should be, I think it's already probably loaded. So there we go. And then there, now I know which point I'm grabbing, and so I know I want to rotate with that point. So, okay, so we can turn back on our point here, and yeah, so we can just drag and drop it wherever we want. So if we wanted to, I don't know, stick it to a building somewhere, we could do that just by dragging this around. Let's find the right height building. Obviously these are all existing, but sometimes it gets a little tricky to like push it in because it's blocking my mouse, so kind of need to get different angles on it in order to actually get it to link up if you wanted it to link up. So not quite tall enough, but I think you get the point. So okay, so that's how we bring elements into Google Earth. So you can bring entire projects or just individual components, just depending on how you have things filtered when you save that Claudia file. So, okay, so I'm going to close this. I'm going to discard. And okay, I think that's pretty much it for what I wanted to cover. Thank you everybody for joining in on this live stream tutorial. Definitely went a bit longer than what I wanted. Stay tuned for next week, where I think we're going to really have a subject matter that's a lot more focused, and instead of trying to build something that has a lot of little details in it and taking a lot of time, I really want to kind of jump right in and talk a lot more about building concrete structures, because I feel like that's what a lot of people typically start with in terms of building their models, is they start with their structural elements. And so we'll really take a look next week at how we want to model these, how to do a lot more analysis of them for estimating and scheduling, and how to actually link this into an estimate template that will calculate the costs through the publisher. So yeah, next week we'll definitely get into a lot more detail on a specific trade. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this live stream. Yeah, thanks for checking it out. And yeah, I hope to catch you on future videos, and make sure to subscribe to get notices on all the live sessions that are going to be coming out here over the next few months and into the foreseeable future. So again, my name is John Hogarth with ContraBIM, and this has been episode 1 of the ContraBIM live stream on YouTube. And please check out the recording, which will be posted here shortly. I'll probably cut things up and do some sort of speed tutorial out of it as well, and maybe even cut things down into smaller bite-sized pieces of trying to understand our modeling process here, so you don't have to watch the whole 3 hours. So okay, with that, I'm going to sign off, and yeah, thanks for staying tuned and watching this live stream.